was on social media one day and I saw an influencer post about them going to sell their items at this new concept called Indy Clover. And I was like, oh, I'm intrigued. That sounds really interesting. I kind of had the store to myself and just walked around looking at all the different options and the booths and just had this overwhelming feeling of like, wow, this is a really fun concept. And I remember leaving thinking like, that is such a fun business concept. It's such a fun experience from the perspective of a shopper. Indy Clover is probably a quarter of the cost to get something started and up and running. The business model is so simple. It's not easy, but it's simple and you don't own inventory. That first year, the marketing learning curve was absolutely our biggest hurdle or challenge. The most rewarding part, hands down, has been being able to provide opportunity for women in the community.
If you're talking to somebody that's on the fence considering an Indy Clover, what would you tell them? Cassidy, thank you for joining us today. Super excited to dive into your adventure and journey with Indy Clover over the last few years. So Cassidy, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and we've learned a lot. So excited to share as well.
So let's start from the beginning. How did you learn about Indy Clover and what were you doing beforehand?
Sure. So I live in Utah. Indy Clover, the first one opened 3.5, maybe 4 years ago. And I was on social media one day and I saw an influencer post about them going to sell their items at this new concept called Indy Clover. And I was like, oh, I'm intrigued. That sounds really interesting. I'm not a big thrifter. I think the concept is really interesting. I love like the ability to shop sustainably, but I have 2 little kids at home and just very limited free time to go out and shop or let alone like spend time getting creative in the thrift store. So I thought, okay, well, this really has piqued my interest. So I'm going to go down to this store in Linden called Indy Clover and check it out. And what's actually interesting is my husband and I were exploring franchise opportunities just in general at the time. We were going through a lot of these conversations with, drive-through coffee and food and home services and just kind of exploring opportunities because we knew we wanted to get into business for ourselves. So that's kind of a side note, but it was kind of the right time, right place. So I drive down to Indy Clover. I walk in, I think it was probably a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So if you're familiar with the Indy Clover model, it's kind of a slower sales day during the week. So it was pretty quiet and I kind of had the store to myself and just walked around looking at all the different options and the booths and just had this overwhelming feeling of like, wow, this is a really fun concept. And so I shopped. I think I spent like $200 in the store that day, just because I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like I have this limited time. I'm here in the store. There's incredible brands, incredible price points. And I like went a little wild. And I remember leaving thinking like, that is such a fun business concept. It's such a fun experience from the perspective of a shopper. And probably 3 or 4 days later, I saw on social media, Indy Clover had posted something like, are you interested in franchising? Like this was very, very early on. And I immediately reached out to Tyler or whoever was behind the post. And I said, I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know that I'm in a position to operate a store right now, but like I need to get involved. How do I get involved? And the rest is history.
It is such a cool model. I mean, when Tyler told me he was doing it a few years ago, and I'm like, that's super interesting. And then without ever telling my wife, when we moved back to Utah, she's like, I found this new cool, like it's the coolest store ever. It's Indy Clover. It's like thrift, but way nicer. And it doesn't have the smell. And you're like, yeah, that's what it's
no
like. It's
smells.
good. It's good. It's such a cool experience. So that's awesome. You mentioned that you were also looking at other brands or other franchise options. What was it that made you land on Indy Clover versus a different option?
Yeah, sure. Couple key things that had us like narrow our focus to the Indy Clover brand. So first things first, if you're familiar with the cost it takes to get involved in a franchise, especially food, and go through that build out, Indy Clover is probably a quarter of the cost to get something started and up and running. So the financial barrier to entry is so much lower for Indy Clover than so many other franchise models out there. So immediately that was appealing. Secondarily, the business model is so simple. It's not easy, but it's simple and you don't own inventory. And that's also was really appealing and is is just a huge factor to what drew us to Indy Clover. And then, of course, which is probably the most important at the end of the day, the brand, the concept, it's fun and it's engaging and it's something exciting to work on every day.
Obviously, you guys hit your marks. It's not like you guys went over budget or anything because that's a really simple business to get into, which is awesome. You mentioned simple but not easy. What's not easy about it? What's the hardest parts?
I think if you are new to brick and mortar retail, which my husband and I, we were new, our partners at the time were new to this, there's a really big marketing learning curve coming into it. I think we went into it very naively thinking we'll just open our doors and we will set up an Instagram account and we'll get some followers and the people will come. And that first year, the marketing learning curve was absolutely our biggest hurdle or challenge. And we just didn't know what we didn't know. And we are 1000% ahead today of where we started with our marketing knowledge day one.
What have you learned? Like, what are the things that actually drive the needle in marketing? Because we always do things that you're like, this is gonna be so exciting, this is gonna crush it, and then nobody shows up. You're like, dang it. And then you do something else, kind of, oh, we'll see if it works, and then it does work. But what are the things like if there's one thing I'm gonna not do based on your experience, and I'm going to for sure do, what would those be?
I think it really boils down to two discrete initiatives that we started running in our store. So, as a baseline, when we opened our first location, we were not running any ads at all. Nothing on Meta, nothing on TikTok, nothing on Google, and we didn't for that first year. We just didn't know that's something you have to do, and it sounds really silly, but that's part of the learning curve. So number one is you have to run ads and not only just like throw random videos out there, but have some sort of ad strategy. So that is the first thing that we had to do. And then the second one, which is something we also learned about a year in, is we started incentivizing our sellers to post to social media the day they set up their booth. So, like you said, when you were talking to Tyler, the founder, everything changed for us a year in. It was when we launched that social media incentive. And almost 3 years later, we are still running it every single Saturday. If someone will post a reel to Instagram or TikTok, we Venmo them $10, just like cold hard cash. And I know $10 doesn't seem like a lot, but you would be amazed at the amount of people that like will go to great lengths to be Venmo $10.
You talked about ad spend, which is very important. And a lot of times in franchising, so okay, I'm paying like my marketing or my brand fee, so that's going to be my local ad spend, which is not the case. That's separate. How much do you recommend to spend on ads, and how are you spending it? Meaning, are you coming up with the strategy and the ads, or are you hiring somebody to do it, or is corporate helping? What's that?
Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about that. So, for our store in Gilbert, and every store in the system is unique, but we spend probably $600 a month across three different platforms. So across Google, Meta, and TikTok. Right now, I do have plans in 2026 to bring that spend a little bit higher because it does have a really big payoff. So that is just our budget that we spend on the platforms themselves. So any video creation or content creation that we do above and beyond costs a little bit more if we want to bring in some talent or professional videographer to film for us. And I do think there's benefit in doing that. And then corporate, the great thing that they provide is the what I'll call ad execution. So I come from an operations background. That's what my full-time day-to-day job is. I am not a marketer, and the time it would take to learn how to run those ad campaigns effectively and to learn from them and to optimize them. I mean, that would take years to like really get proficient in that. So that's an awesome benefit that corporate provides and pays for out of our marketing fee that or we contribute every month. They do the execution side, and then we just provide the budget and the creative.
Okay, you mentioned you're an operator, but you don't operate the store. I never drew that line that clear. You're in Utah. The store is in Arizona. You've never lived in Arizona since the store's been open. That's why I think this model is so cool because typically you look at a franchise and you're like, cool, that franchise is making $110,000. Man, that would be so cool if I could own that. It makes $110,000. but you have to give up your income because it's an owner operated job. So it's like, well, if my income is $80,000, really, what's the delta there? I'm making an extra $30,000. Well, that's great. 30 grand is great. But in this scenario, if you run it, and I hope you could teach us how to do it, did that go into your decision making process? Like, I get to keep my income and I get to add to it, where most food franchises require you to be owner operated and you have to sub out your income?
Yeah, absolutely. Both my husband and I are really passionate about what we do for our day jobs, and we feel really fortunate to be in those positions. And so, like I said, I have an operations background, he has a sales background, and so we work really good as a team. And so we never intended immediately to step away from our what I'll call our W-2 job. So yes, we went into this thinking like, okay, this is going to be a good secondary stream of income, but now we have dreams to make this full time someday and be able to step away from being tied to a desk from 9 to 5.
So you opened up, did you start with one franchise initially, or did you, and then opened it and then you're like, okay, I want to buy a few more. I could see the vision here. Yeah, because you know how much one store's making. You're like, okay, if I could replicate this 3, 4, 5 times, and first store's funding the second, that funds the third, and you do that right, it really snowballs. And in a handful of years,
Who
yeah,
knows?
your life's changed.
Sky's
It's
the
kind
limit. Yeah.
yeah. So, okay, if someone's looking at doing like adding this on as a secondary income rather than a full time, again, it's not easy. I love that you said that. So, what are the do's and don'ts for someone who's looking at doing this as a secondary income? Like, you have to spend at least this many hours on these days, and don't waste your time over here because there's not an impact.
Yeah, I'm going to try to think through how to structure these thoughts, but obviously, you're in a brick and mortar retail store, you have to have boots on the ground. So maybe they're not your boots, but you have to have boots on the ground. So we're really fortunate that from day one, we were able to hire a manager that has stuck with us, 3, almost 4 years later. So she is a young mom. She has 3 kids. She's been able to work a hybrid position for us, which works really well for her and her schedule. So she spends about half of her time in the store managing the shifts and employees, and then about half the time she's able to do the rest of the work that we need from her from home. So she's our boots on the ground. She does all of the hiring, the training, the inventory management, reporting back to us on maintenance, anything that, we would be there and doing, we have been able to outsource, and we're able to outsource from day one.
I love that. So, having a really good manager, and I was actually talking to Tyler, because he has 3 stores, and he's like, I said, how many hours did you spend? He goes, maybe an hour between all 3 stores. I'm like, how? He goes, I'm just really lucky to get a good manager. Like, his answer was the exact same. I'm like, okay, well, talk to me about that. And then he was talking, because me and Tyler connect through Dirty Dough as well. So we have
Oh, cool. Some
some of that
shared
some of
experience.
that background, and some donuts and stuff. I don't know what we were doing together, but we were in the food world and the staffing was terrible. People would turn over every 3 months, and you're like, no, again. And he's like, it's just different with Indy Clover. Like, whether it's a manager or an employee, they just like not smelling like pizza when they go home, I guess. I don't know. What's your experience like with keeping staff in Indy Clover versus how you perceived it would be with McDonald's?
So with our manager, I think the key work environment of being able to provide that hybrid option, like half the time spent in the store, half the time being able to work on her own time outside of the store, has been a really key component to turnover. Secondarily, the folks that work in the store are generally closer to minimum wage. So I did anticipate higher turnover than we've had, but I think the work is fun and engaging. The girls like to be in the store, they like interacting with customers. We give our employees some perks, like every month they get a gift card to shop the store. Like, we really try to do small but little extra things to help retain the staff. And I think the culture and the environment and the nature of the work they're doing really helps on the retention side.
Of that. What do you think has been the hardest part of owning a franchise, of owning an Indie Clover franchise that was unexpected?
I mentioned this earlier, but I would say hands down, it was learning the small business marketing curve. That was our biggest obstacle. And I would say after that first year, when we really started to crack the code on ads and these social media incentives and just tuning in a little bit better to local on the ground marketing, like that's when we really felt like we cracked the code. The rest of the things, like, yes, there's some stressful moments here and there, but the worst thing that could happen is like maybe an employee doesn't show up. Like it's not life and death situations you're dealing with here. And overall it's pretty easy and generally fun.
Like that. I mean, really, yeah, there is no life and death. Anything can wait till tomorrow. You're not unclogging toilets in the middle of the night. So, I love that. What's been, I mean, I love the community aspect of Indie Clover because you have so many sellers that also turn into your buyers and you're building relationships and marketing together and all that cool stuff. What's been the most rewarding part about being a franchise owner?
The most rewarding part, hands down, has been being able to provide. I'm going to get emotional talking about this. And I'm not even there day to day with these people, but it's been the ability to provide opportunity for women in the community that sometimes it's just extra income for fun things, but sometimes that income has made the difference in being able to feed their family or not feed their family that week. And I'll say hands down, that's been the most rewarding part.
I love that. And like, and what are their secondary options? You know, if you need an extra few bucks, you're going to go down to Plato's Closet and get $2 and come back with 50% of your clothes that you can't, like, there's not other good options. So it is really cool that there's a place where people can go, show off their stuff, shop at a great price, and then also sell their own stuff. So awesome, Cassie. This has been great. My last question for you. If you're talking to somebody that's on the fence, considering an Indie Clover, yes, maybe no, what would you tell them?
I actually recommend this business and as a franchise to a lot of the folks in my community and in my close circle because I really do think there's such a low barrier to entry to making this model work. The franchise is young, but it's also the founders are so quick to pick up and run with good ideas. So they're flexible, they're agile. We're all kind of learning and building this thing together. So it's an incredible place to be. I really think that we're on this ground floor of something that's going to be truly incredible, and at the end of the day, it's just a lot of fun to work on.
I couldn't agree more. Cassidy, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.